My name is Sayed Hassan. For those who do not know me, we have an IT services company. We help with recruiting for specialist skills. And I have and a couple of things, right? There have been so many webinars right now in the context of digital transformation, web transformation, whatever name you might want to give it. But what is interesting here is that we want people to leave with something tangible, something that they can walk away and say, you know what, I have something, I have something tangible to work on a transformation, or if they're in the middle of a transformation, they can work on it. So, and then I want to invite up Niti Vaish, who's been in the industry for n number of years. We'll just put it. She's basically one of the things that really stands out from a digital transformation perspective is she's been called into leading transformation projects which have the same or similar issues that any person who is going through transformation is going through: lack of resources, changing scope, and she's been able to bring the project on track with multiple streams across the organization. And without further ado, please help me welcome Niti. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be sharing certain slides and taking them on and off. So don't get too weirded out. Like why am I seeing like a presentation? It's just to guide the discussion here. So without further ado, please help me welcome Niti.
Thank you, Syed. That was a great welcome. Happy Friday, everyone. My name is Niti Vaish. This is my first webinar, and I'm extremely excited. I'm here on a crisp, rainy day in Chicago. Hopefully, wherever you guys are, the weather is better and more beautiful. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm happy to answer after the webinar any questions you may have. Happy to get a discussion going.
All right. So we'll start with the slide so that if you can see it, this is kind of like giving like how did you end up working on digital transformation? So give us a little bit of your background.
Great. I think that's a great way to start. So it's been an evolution. So my journey, and I think what I'm trying to show in this picture is the evolution, how it started on the bottom left and where we are right now. So it started way back when in 2008. For anybody who remembers, that was the time Apple just released their SDK. I was leading a small but mighty 3-person team, and we were tasked to build a mobile app. Nobody even knew how to build mobile apps at that time. There were no books on mobile technology. We cobbled together whatever information we could. We did build a mobile app. It was one of the first car rental mobile apps that was released. We did deploy it on the Apple platform as well as the Android platform. We were thrilled with ourselves. The company was thrilled with us till the problems started coming in. So we had done exactly what I advise clients not to do. So we had built the mobile app as a standalone application. It wasn't integrated with the business strategy. It wasn't integrated with the overall solutions within the company. It was a one-off mobile app that got built by a small team, and it was sitting there by itself. So the kinds of problems that started coming in were, we started getting calls from customer service. They were getting calls from customers around problems with the mobile app. They didn't even know that a mobile app existed because we completely missed onboarding, educating the rest of the organization onto that mobile app. We completely missed integrating reporting. So from a car rental standpoint, getting to see the number of bookings and number of conversions was big for them. And the mobile app was actually working. We were getting bookings off the mobile app, but it was never reported because that's something we completely missed. So, and again, that was 2008. The landscape was changing. I took the learnings from what was happening in the industry at that time. And I started my own company, Blue Sapphire Inc. If you want to know more about it, please feel free to go to my blog, nitivaish.com. You'll see the content over the years, how we've advised and helped clients to assess where they are in this digital maturity landscape. Now, if you fast forward to 2016, what you'll see is that technology now has become an inherent part of business strategy. It helps to drive business strategy. The skill set that people are looking for has also changed. You're looking for overlapping skill sets. You're looking for tech savvy marketers. You're looking for strategic technologists. So it's not just a marketing resource or just a technology resource. You need the two to come together. And that is where I think digital transformation fits in. So after a decade of doing work on digital transformation projects, and I know in this space, people have used digital transformation, digital business, digital marketing interchangeably, digital strategy interchangeably. In my opinion, the way I define digital transformation is using digital technology to drive customer experience, operations, as well as business strategy. And really what I mean by that is your digital transformation project is rarely department-wide. It's rarely ever run by a technology team and is just department-wide. It is almost always enterprise-wide. And because it's enterprise-wide, what you're doing is you're transforming the customer experience, operations, as well as your business strategy. So I hope that helps.
It's not a SharePoint upgrade, huh? So
it is not. It's interesting you say that. No, it is not a SharePoint upgrade because you're doing that SharePoint upgrade for a reason. And it is that reason that one needs to focus on. Otherwise, it's just a technology project.
Got it. So, I mean, so going back to that, so you mentioned update in processes, potentially update in products, potentially upgrade in customer interaction. I think that's really the key here. Like, how is the customer interaction with the touch points changing, right? So I think that may be one of the keys there. So great. So let me share my the second slide here so that you can talk through this one, which is basically, what has been your experience, and since we're here, what are some of the learnings from some of the transformations you've done? Some good, some bad, because I think we learned, like, I think you mentioned one of the ones which wasn't successful, lack of integration. But what are some of the successes here, and what was the impact of these transformations?
Perfect. I think that's great. Apologies that the slide didn't come out as well as I thought it was going to, but I think if you look at it hard enough, you can see the text. So for the purposes of this webinar, I want to focus on 3 different case studies. And like you said, it shows a spectrum. It shows a spectrum of industries. It shows a couple of successes, and it shows one where there are lessons learned, right? And, with every work because this is new, right? It is new for everyone. And all of us are going to mature and learn with every project that we do. So let's start with the first one. So the first one is based on the business insurance vertical. So the company is an insurance broker. So what they do is they manage workers' compensation claim, GL, and other types of claims for clients such as United Airlines, McDonald's. So transformation for them was streamlining their claims experience. For anybody who's been in the insurance and claims space will know that claims intake has historically been extremely difficult. There are multiple case studies that say that higher the lag time, which means the time between when that incident happened and when it was reported, so higher the lag time, higher the cost of the claim. So our goal with this transformation was reducing the lag time and hence reducing the cost of the claim and getting the worker back to work as soon as possible. Great, successful project. Definitely learnings came out of it. And I'll touch upon the learnings as we continue through the webinar. The second example is by far my favorite. It's a personal insurance company. So historically, the company has used agents to sell auto insurance. Transformation for them was selling auto insurance on digital channels, on mobile and web. So if you think back to how we were defining digital transformation, so right here, you're changing the channel of how you're selling. And because the channel is changing, your experience is changing. So if you just break this down and think about this for a little bit. So historically, through agents, to get a quote for an auto insurance could take hours, sometimes even days. The moment you move to the web or mobile, now you need a quote in 2 minutes, 24/7, 365 days in a year. So your space has completely changed. The technology that you need to drive this experience is different from what it was before. The experience is different. And most importantly, the skill set that you need, the people that you need, and the skill set that you need is very different in the new world from the old world. A company that was inward focused, for them to become customer centric, which this personal insurance company did, is a lot of change. And this was one of the largest effort the company had taken, and they were successful. It wasn't cheap, it wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick. But it does take a lot of effort to drive change of this magnitude. And for a lot of companies, if you see, historically, we've done work differently. We have old architecture. We have old databases that don't talk to each other. With that landscape, you now need to meet the new requirements, giving a quote in 2 minutes. That is a huge shift and a huge change. And then moving on to the third example. So I wanted to try and give a variety of industry verticals. This is a supply chain example, and transformation for them, what they were looking to do is streamline the order management system. So to do that, to give you an example, it's not a SharePoint upgrade. So they changed their order management system, and they went from a homegrown solution to an off-the-shelf solution. A lot of learnings came out of this. And the goal that they were trying to get to was get to reducing number of back orders. Getting orders should be more predictable. The lead times should be more predictable. They changed the technology. I think and we'll touch more about the learnings here. I think this was one case study where it was treated more like a technology project. It was driven by technology. I think the learnings here was changing an order management system touches every part of your organization, and they all need to be involved in the transformation. So I think, as we continue the discussion, I'll continue to go back and touch upon these three case studies.
Yeah, that brings me to one of the challenges that we see from a data perspective, not to get too technical here, but one of the challenges some people may have experienced, at least I have, is you have data, a lot of data, sometimes too much data, and making sense of that data in existing applications, it becomes an issue. Going back to the example of the auto insurance, right? It's not just the data, it's just making sense of the data that they would have, and going from, let's say, legacy systems to new systems, mapping that out. It's more than just moving from one system to the other. It's seeing like, hey, for the future, how are we going to input data? How are we going to make sure that it's cleansed data, or it's data that makes some like there's insights to that data. So it requires a little different lens or lenses, if you will, than just bringing in a new technology stack, if you will, right?
Right, and you're dead on, because I think one of the hardest parts of digital transformation, because it's enterprise wide, is we have these legacy databases that don't, they're disparate data systems. So yes, data has to be cleansed and it needs to be connected. It needs to talk to each other, because the experience that you're providing for your customer is a connected experience. I mean, how many times have we all been on a phone calling a company where, the customer said, well, I have no idea about your problem. That's a different business vertical that handles it. And you keep getting transferred from one person to another person. And at the end, half the time your problem is not solved, because behind the scenes, the databases are not talking to each other. The experience is not connected. And that is by far one of the biggest challenges of driving transformation.
Yeah, I like to give an example without names. Is there's an international airline company which will not be named right now, but that is exactly and it's supposed to be one of the better ones. I mean, it's all relative.
I think that is good. Okay, I think we all want to know an airline that's a good airline, but yes.
I mean, apparently it's a reputed airline, but calling them and saying, hey, I actually had to change the bookings because it was, they were looking for my, back in the day, the COVID test, and it hadn't come in, and they were like, well, you just have to do it on the app. And working on the app was like, I need to be the developer of the app, literally. Like, I'm like, am I developing the app for you? Like, I'm having a hard time like working on this app. It's a different language, let's put it nicely, and it was not the most stellar experience. Let's put it like that. And it became kind of like comical after a while, because I went to the airport, and it was my birthday on the airport, and they said, there are some charges, and I was like, I don't understand why, to rebook the flight there were some charges. Anyway, long story short, and the guy comes back and he gives me my boarding pass, and it says 0 charge. And I was like, okay, how much do I have to pay? Because you said, so I said, it's your birthday. It's on us. And I'm like, man, I should only fly on my birthday. It was the funniest incident that I've ever had. Go ahead.
But the positive here is, if you okay, I completely get what you're saying. Mobile app, hard experience, not connected, nobody knows. But the rep who was at the front desk actually talking to the customer had the power to make a change, to drive a change, and you went away feeling good. So yeah. I think,
but I will not be using that airline. That's the thing. After that experience, it was like, okay, I don't know, man. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But just wanted to bring that up as like the customer experience is key. That is for sure, 100%.
And I think like customers, all of us are customers, right? We've evolved over the years. We expect a certain kind of experience, right? We expect a quote in under 2 minutes. My attention span is that of a rabbit. Like, if I'm sitting there and it's spinning for too long, I'll move on to the competitor's site. Not saying that the competitor is going to be any better, but you've lost me and I've gone to the next person. If I'm on the phone for too long, you've lost me. And again, it comes back to, this is the experience customers are looking for. And you've got to have the technology to be able to support that experience. So, do you want to?
Yeah, so it brings up to why do digital transformations fail? Like, what's going on? Like, there are some statistics which say 60%. I think there was a Harvard Business Review article says 60%. I've heard of numbers as high as 85%. So I don't know which number to go with, but it's a lot. The majority are not successful in the key objectives that were initially outlined. Let's put it nicely. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll give my perspective, right? So, and I'm not gonna focus on, so, you mentioned Harvard Business Review. I think anybody who's Googled digital transformation will see some of the obvious ones listed, like lack of executive leadership, lack of clear strategy, company culture where people are not willing to change. All of those are true. They are all absolutely true. But I want to add another layer of detail to that. Based on my experience, where I've seen digital transformations fail. And this cartoon, the more I look at this, the more I love it because I see different. So I was torn between two cartoons. There was this one, and there was another one that says, oh, we are competing with Amazon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let all my salespeople go, and I'm going to get drones and start using drones. So that was the other cartoon. So I was torn between the two.
No,
So
I love this because I see this, or I've been part of this. I'm maybe one of the rats here, or whatever animal is being depicted here. That yes, we are all aligned, but we don't know where we're going.
we don't know where we are going. And so since we are on this topic, let's talk about the skill set gap. I'll start with number 3 first. To drive a digital transformation, you need a specific skill set. You need people. So if you look at your average middle management manager resource, they are very good at driving department-wide projects. It's not a problem. You can manage budget, you can manage scope, you can report upwards, you can report sideways, not a problem. The difference with the digital transformation project is it's not department-wide. It is it is enterprise-wide. It goes across functional silos, and because of that, it requires this. And there are a lot of unknowns. There are a lot of moving parts. So you need the skill set where people can think business, technology, innovation at the same time. They can ask probing questions. They can ask the what if questions. So that is a very specific skill set that's needed. And I was just looking at my notes. I wanted to bring up this quote that I had read somewhere and it stuck with me. It says, most large digital transformation efforts are set up for failure from the start because you cannot expect digital results from analog thinking.
Wow.
So I think this is really telling, right? Because in the old world, what we were building was very well contained. We kind of said, here are our requirements. This is my timeline. This is what I'm going to build. When you get into digital transformation, you have to think of your problem space a little bit differently. You have to think of it in iterations. You have to think of what your MVP is. And we can, if there are any more questions around MVP, I think that's a really critical piece as well. Because when we talk about why efforts fail, it depends upon how have you defined your success criteria. If your success criteria is very narrow and not well thought out, yes, it'll fail. But if you really understand the magnitude of change that's going to happen and you realistically set your success criteria, there's a higher chance that it won't be tagged as a failure. Now, so from skill set, let's move on to number 2, which is, going back to your SharePoint example, the dreaded like-for-like conversion and lift and shift. So if you go back to that supply chain example, what they were doing was they were basically overhaul of the order management system. They were going from a homegrown solution to off the shelf. To try and keep costs low, the thinking up and down the company was, this is going to be lift and shift. We are not changing anything. The old system worked for us. We're going to just take that out and we're going to insert a new system. I think right there is problem number 1. Because what happens is these large critical pieces that drive an organization, they are never lift and shift. They are built differently. You absolutely have to do the hard work of figuring out what your business processes are end to end and map them to the new system. And that is an extremely complex task. And that touches upon the first issue, which is functional silos. Because no part of the company stands by itself. Every function plays a role. So you do need to figure out your business processes end to end. They need to be mapped end to end. And you need to take these business processes and map them into your new system. And there really is, most people will be able to relate to this, that there isn't one person or a small team of people who know these business processes end to end. People know only their functional silos. So
Yes.
you need that skill set that can talk to the SMEs, the subject matter experts, ask the probing questions, and connect the dots of the business process that's going to drive the new experience. Because you're not just taking an old business process and mapping it to new technology. You're actually refining that process so it can drive that get a quote in 2 minutes, 24 by 7, 365. So that's where you need that special skill set that can think through business, technology, innovation, all pulled in together. And I think these are some of the reasons why these efforts fail. If you take a digital transformation project and you think it's a technology project and you run it as a technology project, it's bound to fail. And I want to give, if you really look at the magnitude of change that happens, um, because you're going to pay the price somewhere. You either pay the price upfront in a project and you do the due diligence of mapping your business processes, refining them, making sure you have your right test scenarios so you can test what's been built. If you don't do it upfront, you're going to have to do it after go live. To drive home the point, in our supply chain example, after go live, we had a war room that was set up for over 2 months. We were in hypercare mode for over 2 months. So the customer care reps, the people from the manufacturing plants had a number that they could call because they weren't able to put orders in. They weren't able to, load a truck, come back to the system and put that order in. We even had a person call us from the border. So the truck was loaded, it was crossing the border. He had printed out a piece of paper that showed what product was in there and what price. It was incorrect.
Wow.
So I think if you really think about if you think of it from a very narrow perspective, it's just an order management system. It's a tool. But if you think about the change that it drives, that's where it really hits home, the magnitude of change that a transformation project can drive.
Correct. And to that point, there are multiple touch points. It's not just the end customer. Like in this case, the order management, it can be the truck driver, right? I mean, that may not be your customer per se, but it's an important piece of the puzzle here because if you don't have the product, let's say in time, then there's storage cost, inventory cost, and so on and so forth, or loss of inventory cost. So that's an important point. Just because you're focused on the, let's say, end customer doesn't mean that's the only person that needs to be like thought of from a testing perspective, right? Like if somebody had, I'm sure there were tests run, but maybe some tests were not thought of. And I think it brings up.
Yes, and that exactly is the problem, right? Because you can go through your entire software lifecycle and you can check every box. Did I do my requirements? Check. Did I create my test scenarios? Check. The problem is if your requirements are not thorough, if you haven't really thought through that new experience, if your test scenarios are not thorough, you can create 100 and you can run it and say, yep, I'm done, but you haven't tested every scenario, you will run into a problem. And I think, again, it's having that skill set and going back to that cartoon that we had, to be able to look 5 steps ahead and think through, what is this change, this transformation is going to drive? And have we thought through all the use cases? Have we tested every use case? And like you said, there isn't just one persona. You've got different personas using your product. Have you thought through all those scenarios?
Absolutely. That's I would say that's riveting in a way that I would say I'll give an example which yeah, I don't know how relevant it will be, but I remember working in an insurance company back in the day, and there was a Microsoft product, like a CRM product, Microsoft CRM product that was being developed for account management. Okay, and I remember that there's a concept of unit testing, which means that once a developer does their development, then they test their own code to see if it works. And honest to God, till this day, I could not believe that some of this stuff was being unit tested. Like it was so blatantly incorrect that it was like, how did you even say that this is even doing the basic functionality of what you were saying that it's going to do? Because anybody, you don't even need to be an expert here. You can see it's not working at all. There is no function. It's just, hey, let's just dump the code. Hopefully,
It'll
something
work. Yes, the
like,
magic is going to happen.
my
Yeah.
God, I was like, man, I felt really sorry for the QA team over there because I was like, you have to go like a tooth comb, like you just have to look at every single error and just bring it up, like, because there's really no the concept. And when I say testing, it's something that sometimes gets missed, but hey, we developed the functionality. Well, was it positively tested? Was it negatively tested? Without getting into too much detail here, but the point here is you need some expertise in each area here, like whether it be testing, whether it be development, whether it be, and across the org, like you mentioned, but it needs a thorough validation of what is saying that needs to be done versus what's actually done. So
Right. No, 100%. And so now, you have this large team, generally, these transformation efforts, you can think, you can piecemeal it, and I would highly, highly encourage not to do a big bang approach, but to do an MVP approach and an iterative approach. Test and learn, because, you're venturing into a space that you've not been before. You, like in the Star Wars analogy, right? You've got new technology, new experience. You might even be targeting a new customer segment that you haven't targeted before. You are not 100% sure how they'll behave. So figuring out what that MVP is, do a test and learn, and continue to iterate and add to it. It allows you, and going back to transformation failing, and how do you quantify failure? And then again, failures depend upon how were you measuring success. So if you're able to take your big problem and divide it into chunks, it is easier to think through it. It is easier to put a cost to it, and it is easier to measure success. And I would just say that one has to be more realistic about it. And I want to just, I'm sure you're going to ask this question, and since we're talking about it, I'm going to dive into it. I think there are so many aspects when you think about the cost of a digital transformation project. It isn't just building the product, because if you truly think about the cost, to drive that experience, most times you need new technology. So there's the cost for technology modernization. There is the cost for upskilling your employees so they can actually use that technology. There's the cost for building your MVP solution. There's the cost for future-proofing your architecture, right? Ensuring that the architecture that you have will continue to scale. Because go back to the personal insurance example, right? You've gone from getting a quote in days to getting a quote in 2 minutes, 24/7, any time of the day or year. Your technology has to be able to support that, and new experiences are coming as we speak. People are talking about Web3, they're talking about AI. All that technology requires a certain type of hardware, and you have to be able to future-proof your solution. And that all of that adds to the cost.
Absolutely. I think in the world that we live in, I mean, I agree that we need future proofing, but I think just now proofing is enough for some people. Forget future proofing is like, hey, like you're talking too much in the future. Let's just make sure it works right now. Like, so I mean, but
Right.
I agree with you. If you're thinking about the future, at least some things in the present will be fixed, right? Like if you're not even thinking about the future, then today is
Most companies, and I'm in this process right now, like most companies, as they think about serving, whether it's the teenage, the Gen X, Gen Y on a different medium, on digital channels, um, you're looking at continuing to support your current technology because you can't stop working. You need to keep building what you're building. At the same time, supporting an architecture for the future. So that is really something I think every business technology team needs to start thinking through. That how do you not stop the work that you're doing right now? You continue to deliver, and at the same time support the new generation architecture and build the new generation experiences, and have the two come together. Um, that that's all hard things. It's not easy. All things that companies need to think through and do as they launch into the digital transformation.
Got it. So that moves us to the one of not the last slide, but one of the last ones is life lessons and business lessons, right? So I think this is a good one as well, a segue from that.
Yeah.
So what would be your, let's say, life lesson versus or business lesson?
I thought about this a little bit, and I went with this: uncertainty is okay. Because I think one thing, as we think about the skill set that's needed to drive digital transformation, right? We've spoken about overlapping skills. We've spoken about tech savvy marketers, strategic technologists. The other aspect of it is being okay with unknowns, being able to make decisions with unknowns. So again, if you compare, the technology projects we used to run in the past, our world was a little bit more defined. They were smaller in scope. You get your requirements, you create your plan, you build to it. When you step into this transformation space, there's a lot of unknown. Off the bat, what's happening is your span is increasing. You're going across functional areas. You are impacting customer experience. You're re-looking at your technology. And there's a lot of unknowns in this. And you have to be able to make decisions with those unknowns. The one thing that I always also say is you'll also never have all the data that you need to make a decision. You can look at data, you can pull it together, you can connect it. You'll still need to go with your experience, your gut feel when you make a decision. And also, not every decision is going to be right because we are all testing and learning. What you need to be able to do is pivot. And I think that is the other life lesson and business lesson, that you will not always be right. And you have to be okay. And the organization has to be okay to learn, pivot, to make it right. And which is why with these transformation projects, starting, I'm going to say start small, and I'm going to elaborate on that. I know, from a bookish language perspective, it's easy to say start small and build on it. The problem you run into, let's go back to the example of personal insurance. To have an MVP, you need to be able to sell auto insurance. If you're not selling it, you haven't delivered much. You can incrementally build and deploy to your QA environment, but when you're deploying to out live that customers can actually use it, your MVP ends up being sizable because your base has to have certain level of functionality. Beyond that, yes, you can continue to increment. Your size, every subsequent release can absolutely get smaller. and manageable. But it's that first release because it has that base level of functionality. And that's also where most of the heavy lifting is done. You're thinking through the experience, you're updating your technology, you're making sure you have your right skill set to drive this effort. Lot of heavy lifting, lot of unknowns. And I do want to touch upon one other thing. I haven't seen any questions come up on the chat. If there are, most people would have heard about using agile technology. Yes, we'll start small, we'll build an MVP, we'll work in an agile platform, we'll be all good. The problem is agile is fine, it's great, but ultimately, again, you have to operationalizing a digital transformation project is an effort in itself. Making sure that you've taken that work and you've divided it into the correct release trains and you're managing your dependencies between the release trains and you're managing reporting, it's a complex task. It's not simple. Having a digital transformation PMO who can actually look at your backlog and know how close you are to done and report on that, getting to that point is complex, not simple.
Yeah,
But
100%.
again, this is what adds to the cost as well.
100%. So, I mean, the point here is agile is not a cure-all for, you can say, especially from a project planning perspective, or even documentation perspective. People fail to realize, it's a document lean, and there's there is some value to documentation as well, especially if you're, let's say, in the insurance industry, pharma industry, healthcare industry. There are legal ramifications for not they're not knowing when a change happened or what was the reason for the change not happening. So I think that's one of the things that really gets people, because I know of an unknown to all of you, but known to me. There's a financial institution that a couple of years they do this agile thing, like, hey, everything's, we have scrum masters, and then they go back to their waterfall, and I'm like, it's perfectly fine, do waterfall. If that's working for you, that's perfectly acceptable, right? So I think that's really one of the interesting things that at least I can think of, that agile is not a cure-all, like you're saying, right? Like, and you have to deliver at a specific point in time. It's not like, hey, one day we will deliver when the agile trains align at the same time, let's put it nicely, right? So and maybe somebody is able to do that. I'm not saying they're not able to do, but to your point, that's a
and I think this is the complex world we live in, right? And navigating this complexity is what people need to be okay with. Definitely, and I'm not a purist by any means, and I'm not getting into a debate about agile, but yes, the good parts are you're taking a big problem, you're dividing it into smaller chunks. Your team can deliver in an agile format, but like the delivery team can deliver in an agile format. But from an overall perspective, when you're deploying your product, to your point, there are compliance reasons, there are marketing reasons, there are several different reasons where you need to hit a date. A date is announced and you need to hit a date. And I think that is the complexity of the world that we live in, that all of us have to be able to navigate, that while you're building in an agile world, you are still deploying in a little bit of a waterfall fashion, for several different reasons. Maybe not always, but that is a complexity we have to learn to navigate. And this is great. So now you brought up my favorite topic.
Yes, what's the secret sauce? Like, what I know we talk about personas. I know there's conversation about having touch points, but what does that really mean? And what is this customer journey mapping, and what does it do?
Got it. So I've actually put a sample here from one of the work that I had done a couple of years back. So let's just talk about what is customer journey mapping. So several years back, Forrester had written a book and they called it the outside in approach. So the focus of that study was take your customer, the customer is outside of your organization, take your customer and make your customer the center of your organization and think of all your processes around your customer and then try and deliver an experience for your customer. So your customer journey mapping is really thinking of the people, process, tools that need to come together to deliver an experience to a customer. So you're thinking of your current state as well as you're thinking of your future state, and you're trying to define your pain points. You're trying to define where your processes are broken. And I do want to caution as well. You brought up personas, and in with many clients, when I go, I hear, oh, we have our journey maps created for all our personas. We know who our persona. They'll have a persona called Jim. They'll have another persona called Lucy, and they will have the journey mapped out. Most often, the issue that I find is if those journeys are created by people who are not business technology savvy, you're missing the point of really figuring out where that pain point is. Where are your processes broken? What do you really need to fix? You can have a very high level journey and it'll show you, when Lucy how many times a day or how often is Lucy touching your website? What shows is Lucy watching? um, Many high level, and it's good information because you can walk in their shoes. But if you're using your journey map to really find where your process is broken and how you can really streamline your customer experience, and I love this word that is used these days, remove the friction, make it frictionless, app smooth. So to your point, when you're using your mobile app, it should be completely seamless. Your mobile app should know in what kind of environment that app is going to be used, and it should be tailored to that. I want to give you an example of this customer journey where I've done it successfully. There is a client in Chicago. They are in the water purification business. So, and they have a large sales force. They have about 3,000 plus salespeople who work with clients like Honeywell. And from an organization perspective, what they wanted to do was they wanted to ease the job of these salespeople so they don't spend time on day-to-day mundane tasks. And when they go meet clients, they can have value-added conversations with clients. They can advise clients rather than just working on the day-to-day mundane tasks. Great idea. What the company did, they built a CRM application. And the hope was the salespeople would log in the time, when they are at the client site, when they leave the client site. So the goal of the CRM application was not really to help the salesperson. It was really to help the organization keep tabs on the salespeople. How long are they spending on different tasks? It wasn't used at all. So when I went to the client side, they said, well, this is our problem. We've spent X number of dollars, we've spent this much time, we built a CRM app, nobody is using it. Maybe what we should do is make a mobile version. If we make a mobile version of that CRM app, maybe our salespeople will start using it. And again, this was the same time when Forrester had done the study, and there really were no books. I just had a white paper that I had printed out. And I said, just give me some time, give me about a month. Let me just get myself acquainted with the scenario. Let me job shadow the salespeople. Let me try and understand. Let me walk in their shoes for a little bit. And if we don't come up with any ideas, we'll create a mobile app for your CRM solution. We picked a couple of salespeople. I shadowed them. I actually went to the plant where they were. I had to buy steel toe shoes. I had no idea that you had shoes with the steel toe. Um, so when I went there, a couple of things struck me. Most of the salespeople were male and they were older male. So what that means is if you give them a small mobile app with lots of buttons, they can't really press those buttons, right? Because your fingers are bigger than the amount of space that you have on the phone. The other thing that I saw is the work that the sales force did was, because it's a water purification plant, they go out to these tanks and they put something like a ruler in the tank to measure the quantity of the liquid. And based on where the liquid is, where the chemical is, they reorder. They reorder the chemical for it to go back into the tank. In most cases, the tank didn't have a cover. So they could be standing there while it's raining and they're measuring the level of the chemical in the tank. In one hand, they had a flashlight so they could be able to see. And in the other hand, they had a little notebook so they could write what the level was. So when they went back to the trailer, they could open up their laptop that took like 10 minutes to boot up, then bring up an old order management system and type in that quantity. The whole process was taking so long. And it was almost my last day when one of the guys that I was job shadowing said, Amazon has a reorder button. There's a big reorder button when I go to the Amazon app. So why don't we have that? He said, I'm ordering the same quantity, the same chemical to the same location most of the time. Sometimes there's a variation. So going back to the journey map, when we laid it out, we said, here is one point of friction. And we looked at it. So the other part of a journey map is to be able to look below the fold and see whether the technology can support that experience. So we did do an initial study to see what data was there to support this experience. And this was a game changer for them because you are now building something that will actually help the sales force and it'll actually make their life easier. So I think journey mapping is a very powerful tool if done right.
Got it. That is something really tangible, and I think the story talks about not jumping in at the first opportunity because as most people, I can talk about myself. We're a lot of people who are implementers that just like to do things, which is good, but to know what we're doing is better. So we have a lot of questions. So if you want to open up, I think there is one, which is, what are your thoughts on the importance of, I can move it here, executive support in data transformations?
Okay, I think it's critical, and I'll tell you the reason why. Because again, it's not a department-wide effort, right? You're going across departments. Each department has their own agenda. They have their own leadership. They measure success differently. So to be able to drive this cross-department effort, you do need leadership support. And I think also from a monetary standpoint and a change standpoint, the magnitude is so high that the company has to be invested in driving this change. Because dates will be missed. It is hard to meet, and you have to be okay with that. You can put a goalpost and you can try to hit that date. And if you don't make it, understand why, pivot, change, make the changes that you need to hit the next date. So you need the leadership support, you need the funding to be able to, and you need alignment across the organization to drive this effort. So it is absolutely critical. And most times, most times to start these, the way I've seen it is, an organization will probably get one of these higher end, consulting companies to even just drive a rough strategy. What does transformation mean for us? Are we venturing into a different geography? Is it a different customer segment? Are there new channels? What all do I need to change? And again, this is all high level, but it's still on a couple of slides, and that work still needs to be done. After that work is done, and what that allows, I think, senior leadership to do is just be in alignment that it is going to take time, it will be expensive, and these are the high level things that I need to do. The big task after that is to take that and operationalize it, to basically that large ship that you have, your company, just gear them towards building this. That takes a lot of effort, and you need people on the ground who can actually drive that.
Awesome. Thank you for that detailed answer. There's another one. Based on your experience, is there a way to predict, I think goes back to that, predict the duration of the whole transformation? If you know the extent of the changes and applications needed, develop, right? Like, I think the question stems from the fact that, yes, ideally we want to shift and pivot, but every company has a budget for the year, and they want to say, okay, how much of this bucket are we going to use for this transformation? And then how long is it going to take? And which of our people are going to be, championing this transformation? So,
right. And, it is, most times that I've seen it happen is, it's not that you start and, you just keep going and everything is hitting dot on budget and timeline. Most times what I've seen is you start and, the first year, people are still kind of regrouping, just figuring out, what are we building? How are we going to do it? You get that high level presentation. There's still a lot of unknowns that how do you take that and actually operationalize it? So there's cost that's gone into it. You really haven't gotten any value back out from it. And which is why this leadership support is so important, because you need to stay with it. I mean, there are multiple examples where I think there's an example with GE, where they tried their transformation, they failed, they stopped, they retried it. So there is, and even in my personal insurance example, right? We had grand plans that when we started, within a year and a half, our MVP will be deployed. It took us over 2 years to deploy the MVP. We just were not ready. And to your point of compliance, we had actually given a date as to, because from an insurance standpoint, we were launching a new product, a new auto product. So you do need to declare it. There's a write-up that goes. We had to resend that because the date changed. So, I mean, I think all I can really say is it is hard. The best one can do is take that large work and divide it, into smaller chunks. Even defining that MVP takes a lot of effort, because the scope of your MVP has to go across your functional areas. Everybody thinks that the function that they support is the most important. It has to be supported. So even figuring out what your key use cases are that you're going to support in your MVP, and the ones that you don't support, how are you going to marry your digital with your non-digital experience?
that's awesome. On that note, I think we will close it out. It's a minute to go for 9:30, but I think it gives enough food for thought, I believe, and enough tangible things for people who are in the midst of digital transformations to utilize it. Thank you so much for your time.